of reframing, um, and also how to use the reframes to disrupt the symptomatic cycle. And then talk a little bit about um, when changes happen in the sessions, how to amplify those changes, how to consolidate the changes so that you can successfully wrap up the therapy. Um, and then the second half, I will show the videotape. Um, so great. So let's get started with the question. Let me pull it up and I will read it. Okay. I would like to understand more deeply what signs a therapist can use in the first few minutes to see that a couple is returning to their usual homeostasis and how best to intervene at that point. Um, so great question. I think one of the best ways to see how a couple or a family for that matter returns to sort of their more familiar state of interacting is if you ask them to talk directly to each other, particularly about one of the reasons why they have come to therapy. So if you ask a couple, um, to talk directly to each other, like I might ask a husband to find out from his wife what she would like to see different from him, um, in terms of how he relates to the kids, for instance. So I might ask a question and then say, please turn to each other and talk directly. And then I will look down, maybe just stare at my shoes or stare at the floor or something, and then notice what the couple does. If they stay locked in a battle with each other, and almost as if the therapist doesn't exist, that's telling you something about how they are organized and that they are likely enmeshed. Um, and then if you try to intervene, but then they push you out and just go back to talking to each other, that is an example of a return to the homeostatic kind of condition. Um, Now, if you are working with a couple that is conflict avoidant, and you ask them to talk directly to each other, that is something that is going to feel unfamiliar or feel slightly challenging to what the family homeostatic condition or couple homeostatic condition is. And you will notice that even after asking them to talk directly to each other, that is very difficult for them to do that. Um, so the the question isn't so much like how in that moment do you make them turn back to each other? Um, it's an important data point to recognize that, okay, this is what they have trouble doing, and this is going to be part of the work. So whenever you see um, couples, when you are offering them to do something a little bit different, and they resist that or go back to more familiar patterns, it's an opportunity to notice it and then also try to bring that to awareness. I might ask, I'm so curious. I could have sworn that I asked the two of you to talk to each other directly and not to talk to me. I'm curious what's happening here. So I might instill a little bit of humor there. Um, and so part of that is to uh, bring to light, bring to awareness what they are doing. The invisible pattern, make it visible, essentially. Um, and so whenever you are trying to do an enactment and asking people to talk to each other directly and not involve the therapist, you get really good data on how the couple functions, on how the family functions. Um, so great question. Okay, I'm going to now share my screen. Okay, and so I'm going back to the slide on the symptomatic cycle, and want to give a quick example of what that might look like before we go into the reframes and questions and strategies to disrupt the symptomatic cycle and really go more in depth on that. Um, so a very let's say a child refuses school, and that is the symptom, school refusal. The parent becomes anxious about that. Um, and then maybe the parent over accommodates to the child's anxiety, which leads to uh, not pushing the child to go to school, but accommodating to that anxiety. So what ends up happening is the child avoids school more, which amplifies the anxiety. Um, and then ultimately, if the problem continues and gets worse, then the child's school avoidance leads to other entities intervening. So it could be truancy staff. I don't know if they have that in Ukraine or, but here in the States, if a child of a certain age is not going to school, then the parents are at risk of being investigated for potential child neglect if their child is not going to school. So if a child isn't going to school often, then that problem gets picked up by the outside entity, whether it's Child Protective Services or something related to the school. And then that's how the outside entities intervene, which ends up being part of the symptomatic cycle. Um, okay. Um, go to reframes and questions. Okay. So techniques to interrupt the symptomatic cycle. Alrighty. Um, so what is a reframe? It's basically changing the meaning of behavior. Um, so a reframe is, and we always want to think of the most important reframes at the beginning of our work with families is to reframing the behavior as stemming from a problem, an individual problem that exists inside somebody to a problem between people. Now, that doesn't mean that a kid doesn't have ADHD, for instance, or depression or anxiety or whatever it might be. But that is not the primary issue. And the best way for us to intervene is to help in the relationships. So, changing the meaning of behavior. Ultimately, the goal is to reduce blame and to reduce defensiveness and open a space for a new interaction. That's the purpose of a reframe. Why do reframes work? They shift perspective, which ultimately leads to shifting interaction. Ideally, it lowers emotional reactivity. Um, and we look to create flexibility in rigid systems. It slows things down to help bring reflection. So, reframing, changing the meaning to shift the interaction. So, let's say um, uh, a common problem might be, like I was saying before, a child's anxiety, right? That's keeping them from going to school. Um, so a reframe around that might be, um, it sounds like your child's anxiety might be holding the family together. It keeps everyone focused on one place instead of conflict elsewhere. So I might say this, for instance, when I see that when I'm tracking the what happens just before the symptom, the child's avoidance of school, and then what happens during and what happens after. Um, Maybe parents start to work together more or talk to each other when a kid is not going to school. So there's something about that behavior that promotes or elicits interaction between the parents. Um, and so I might say something like I said before, around it sounds like your child's anxiety might be in some interesting way bringing the two of you closer together. And it kind of keeps everybody focused on that. And I wonder if there's conflict elsewhere. I don't know. I could be wrong. Um, so we're trying to disrupt the avoidance of um, certain conflicts. Uh, and we are also in that reframe. Um, Bringing the idea that the child's anxiety is related to, connected to, in relationship with the marital conflict or the, um, so another reframe, um, if you think of behavior as a form of communication. Um, so, maybe um, you might say to a kid or a teen, um, when you side with your mom against your dad, I wonder, it seems like I get that your dad takes it as disrespect, But I'm wondering if it's not disrespect exactly. I wonder if it's a way of you trying to stay connected to her. Um, so in that way, you are trying to open up this idea of the kid just being disrespectful, but rather what might they be doing that makes them get in between their parents or take sides? Um, Another reframe when parents will sometimes come in and talk about their problem child. Um, and even in families with multiple kids, sometimes the siblings will also join in that narrative that so and so is the problem child. Um, and so in a situation like that, we're looking at the possibility of scapegoating. Um, so a way to just get in there and kind of disrupt that is to be curious and say, I wonder he may be showing when things in the family are off balance. Um, so it's a way of wondering about what the kid is doing and giving it a larger, expanded potential meaning. Um, a very good reframe for parents in particular who are overly controlling or rigid, um, instead of telling them that they need to lighten up or loosen up, um, you would say, your strict rules seem like a strong effort to protect your children from getting hurt. So you are, in that sentence, you are bringing out their instinct to protect their children, and you're highlighting that with the purpose of reducing potential defensiveness. Another way to reframe what sometimes is viewed as a negative behavior. So, like you see this in couples when one member shuts down and seems to kind of go quiet or get distant. Um, you might say, when you shut down, I think it's your way of preventing the things from escalating. So again, you're framing it in a way to acknowledge uh, the potential escalation or the potential protection, the instinct to protect. Um, so it's the creating distance functions to keep things safe, to keep the conflict from boiling over. Um, now, it isn't, you still want to change that behavior, but it's easier to help that person change the behavior when you help them see that there's aspects of it that are meaningful and that makes sense. Uh, and this, by the way, is a very good way of joining when we talk about sort of the key component, I think, of any therapy. is our ability to connect in a deep and meaningful way with the people that we're working with to help them feel understood and seen. That is when you give a new meaning to their quote negative behavior, like substance abuse, for instance. It's a unwise attempt to try to deal with something that is uncomfortable, a certain kind of pain. And so um, you want to acknowledge that the person is trying to deal with something, and that's what we all do as humans. We try to manage um, things that are uncomfortable, um, and reduce pain. And so certain unhealthy behaviors, whether it's substance abuse or other unhealthy behaviors, are simply a not the best way of trying to deal with an underlying um, issue of pain. But by demonstrating that we recognize we want to get to the pain, that's the key. We want to get to, and reframing helps slow things down and helps us get to the more primary feelings and experiences that are underneath the quote symptomatic behavior. Um, so I am always asking questions. To questions I think are the best tool to disrupt um, the symptomatic cycle. Um, and so I'm asking questions to both expose the patterns, but it's not just about gathering information. I'm also trying to highlight sequences of behavior or sequences of interaction. So tracking the cycle. So I might say, what usually happens right before your daughter refuses to go to school? And really flesh that out. Does it happen like right before the bus comes or right when the kid wakes up, or does it happen even the night before? And then you also would ask, and when that happens, when your daughter refuses to go to school, what do you do next? What do you do in response to that? What does she do in response to your response? Who reacts after that? And that gives you, so you're doing two things. You are um, both assessing what the pattern is, but you're also intervening in a way to make these more invisible patterns more visible and uh, ideally getting people to be more reflective and aware of what these patterns are like. Um, so another question that can interrupt different symptomatic cycles, such as blame. Um, I might ask parents, or a family for that matter, when the parents argue a lot. I would ask, Who is most affected when you two argue? Um, and so I'm asking, it's not about which one of you is at fault for the argument, but the fact is that the argument is happening and it's frequent. So what's the influence of that? Who is affected by that? Um, and you might say, what do you think your children learn when they see you argue or when they see um, you fight? When when I am working with a family where I suspect there's that um, what do you call it? Triangulation or uh, displacing. I'm totally forgetting the word, but anyways, when parents are avoiding their conflict with each other and kind of detouring it, that was the word, detouring it to the children. Um, you might say when you and your child agree and you see that let me back up for a second. And when you see that there's a coalition between one parent and one child against the other parent, um, you can say, when you and your child agree, what happens to the other parent in that moment? Um, and you also might say or ask, um, who does your child go to when upset with the other parent? Do they go to you? Do they actually go directly to that parent? So when we are thinking about restructuring, we want to, in a way, kind of remove triangles and get people to talk more directly to each other. Um, so, you know, I would want if one of my children is upset with me about something I did or didn't do for that matter, um, I would want them to be able to go and complain to my wife about me, but I also want them to be able to come to me too and tell them why they're upset and tell them why they're angry at me. So I would want my wife to be able to help them turn to me. Now, it would mean that she might acknowledge what they are feeling, but then say, well, what do you think about talking to dad about that? Do you need help talking to dad about that? I can help you with that. Um, as opposed to, oh, wow, yeah, dad is so annoying. I don't like when he does that either. Which is would be reinforcing the coalition and me being on the outside. Um, okay. Some other examples of using reframes to um, as a tool to create some disruption of patterns. So sometimes we want to create a sense of urgency when we feel like a family or parents aren't responding actively, proactively enough to a situation that's going on with their kid. We want to build a little bit more urgency. And I might say something like, if this pattern continues for another year, what do you imagine will happen? Um, what will happen when your 12-year-old becomes 16 or 17? Um, and you also might want to say, what would need to change for the outcome to be different? So you're asking members of a family what they think needs to change. Um, and then, what ends up happening, sometimes you might get a response that, well, he or she needs to change. Um, and oftentimes in a situation like that, uh, what I then try to do is really slow things down and help people understand our interconnectivity and the idea of complementarity and also frankly that we just don't have control over what other people do. And so you might say like, okay, I get that you want so and so to change. And you've been doing X, Y, and Z to try to make that happen. How's that going for you? Is that effective? Um, and if they say it is effective, then well, it's like, well, what are we doing here? But usually 99.9 times they will say, no, it's not effective. So there's an acknowledgement that what they are doing isn't helpful. And you could say, well, you have more control over what you do than what he or she does. Um, okay, so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about reframes that are helpful to address issues around enmeshment and issues around disengagement. Um, and then also um, when a child is symptomatic. And a reframe embedded in a question. Um, because the reframe is a statement, but then attaching a question to it is the way to open it up and to expand the meaning. So, for instance, let's think of an enmeshed parent and child. I might say, it seems like your closeness has made it hard for independence and autonomy to uh, grow for your child. What would it look like for your child to solve a problem without you stepping in? So I say that when I am worried about a parent being overprotective. Um, Not worried, when I see a parent being overprotective and getting in the way of their kid um, learning how to uh, navigate something complicated, learn how to ask for help, learn how to struggle and not give up right away when somebody swoops in to help them. Um, so another example, if I were working with a more um, disengaged parent, I might offer the reframe. So stepping back when you see your child doing these things might be your way of avoiding conflict, which is understandable. Um, what happens in the family when you don't step in? Um, so you are acknowledging or helping the person recognize that, okay, they are doing something to avoid conflict. And that maybe it's protective. But you want to help them gain more awareness of, well, what happens when you do that? What happens to other people? What is the influence of your action? Okay. Um, so let's see another example of when a child is symptomatic. Um, I might say something like, your child may be expressing something that the family hasn't been able to say. If your child didn't act this way, where would the tension show up instead? So um you're wondering, you don't say your child is expressing something that the family hasn't been able to say. You're saying your child may be expressing. Um and so you are that's our way of challenging the symptom, challenging the uh, family narrative. Um, and then you ask a question that if your child didn't act this way, what else might we be focused on? Where would the tension show up instead? Um, I was working with a family many years ago that they came in for the first session. It was a single mom and two children, school-age children. I think one was maybe in junior high, like 13 or 14 years old. The other one was maybe 10. Um, and the presenting complaint was the 10-year-old was getting in trouble at school. And a lot of phone calls were being made to the mom. Um, and so there was a referral to the agency that I was working at the time. Um, but it was based on the 10-year-old's disruptive behavior at school. Um, so when they came to my office, had I been working from an individual lens, I might have just seen the kid individually. Um, and in that situation, I probably would have worked with the kid on emotional regulation and tried to figure out what's going on for them at school. And then, um, but I didn't, or I don't work that way. And so I brought the whole family in, brought the 10-year-old sibling, older sibling, um, and the mother. And the first 3 quarters of the session, I could hardly get mom and the older sibling to stop complaining about the younger one. So they were very much kind of aligned to the script of the youngest was the identified patient. He's the problem. We want to fix him. Um, I had a sense that there was more to this story. So in my trying to elicit uh, information around other relationships in the family, in that first meeting, I discovered, and it was almost like a throwaway comment, that the oldest one, who seemed at that moment to be super aligned with the mom in sort of complaining about the younger one, that the older one had run away to the maternal grandparents' home just a week or so prior to my meeting with them. Um, and so in there was definitely, had I asked something like, if the youngest, the 10-year-old, wasn't always such a pain, what would what would the other tensions that show up be? Um, and lo and behold, the primary issue of that family situation was not the 10-year-old's behavior. In fact, his behavior steadily got better at school, but he was essentially bringing in his mom and his sister, who had tremendous conflict between the two of them at home. Um, and this was his way of trying to get help, essentially, and trying to get somebody to see that. And he didn't know at 10 years old really how to articulate that, um, except to act out at school, get in trouble, and then eventually, and I think fortunately, got uh, referred for family therapy. Um, okay. Uh, so like I was saying earlier, um, um, about the example of the couple and asking people to talk directly to each other in the room. I might say, can you say that directly to your partner instead of through your child? Um, I often see um, if two parents are in the room and their quote problematic child, one might say something uh, that's obviously a dig at the other parent, but they kind of say it through the kid. So they say, yeah, you probably don't like when dad does that, or you don't like when mom does that, you know? Um, and so in a moment like that, I might say, um, I understand that you have a concern there. I would like you to say that directly to your partner instead of through your kid. Um, and then I would build a narrative around um, asking the kid what it feels like for them to be the go-between between their parents. Um, I might say, as another way to elicit in the moment interaction. I would say I'd like the two of you parents to decide this issue together about curfew. And teen, I want you to just listen for a moment. And I like to do that, especially when parents have trouble collaborating around parenting issues. Um, so I will give them that task and ask them to do that in front of me. And a lot of times people will say, well, we've already, that feels uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. And you say, well, I know it might feel a little weird and strange to talk in front of me. Um, but it's really helpful for me to be able to help you all um, to do this. And usually people will comply. Um, and in asking them to talk to each other, I then notice how soon will the child interrupt the parents' dialogue. So if the parents are in conversation, and I say to leave the kid out, um, I then step back and watch and see what the system naturally does. And if they are doing well, um, the parents will be able to have a productive, constructive conversation without the child intervening. And the child might intervene because one parent looks at that child, which signals, hey, I want you to be involved, even if it's not conscious. Uh, um, or the child will sense tension between the parents and will not be able to sit with that and feel the need to get in there to uh, um, shake things up and make it about them to ease the parents' feeling of dis-ease between the two of them. Okay. Um, Alrighty, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Whoops, what's happening here? Consolidating change. Um, okay. So up to this point, we've been disrupting patterns and really focused on assessing what the patterns are that are maintaining the symptom and that therefore need to be disrupted. Um, Now the goal is to make those changes stick. So the family ultimately can maintain those changes um, without us, without the therapist. That's our ultimate goal. My goal is to get fired, but not because I'm not helping or not useful, but fired because the family actually feels more confident and competent in being able to address the different challenges that naturally arise in families without the need to get somebody from outside of the family to come in. Um, so the first thing that's key in consolidating change is the amplification of strengths. So I'm actively looking for moments where the family is already doing something different. And I want to make these moments bigger and more visible. So I want to highlight even very, very small shifts. Um, and I label them as meaningful. And I attribute the success to the family, not to the therapist. Uh, so I might say something like, did you notice how you let your daughter answer for herself just now? That was beautiful. Um, that would be in the case where a parent is over functioning, and you really want to search for those little moments where the parent doesn't overfunction, and it allows the kid to be more independent. Um, and then you might even amplify, like, wow, your daughter did such a good job articulating herself, speaking for herself. Um, if you notice a different pattern, um, such as, a parent who, if we stay on the idea of the kind of the over-involved parent who steps in too much, um, you might say, I just noticed a different pattern. You gave space instead of stepping in. Wonderful. And I might say, you're already showing you can do this. That's great. Um, so you are on the hunt always for the moments when they do things well, or they do things in a way that exhibits uh, a detour or from the old way, the old pattern. And you really want to be able to stay there, and be able to take an extra beat or two on those moments, and to not lose sight of that. Um, because it's very easy with certain families to get sucked into the crisis of the week. Every week's a different crisis, but actually, for some families, they're very used to that. That's sort of their homeostatic condition, is that there's always a crisis, and that they're actually, in some ways, more used to or accustomed to volatility versus when things are actually just kind of okay. Um, Another key component to decentralizing the therapist, or a key component to consolidating change, is the decentralization of the therapist. Um, so unlike other therapies where the therapist is always plays a starring role, we want to become the structural family therapist wants to become irrelevant. Um, I want families to be able to turn to each other before they turn to me. So at this stage, I start stepping back so the family relies less on me, more on each other. Um, I'm trying to shift the responsibility of responding to problems back to the family members. Um, and so I'm pulling back and kind of reducing my involvement as the organizer of interaction, and encouraging direct communication between members. Um, so I might say something like, I'm going to step back. Can you two work that out together? and I might say, I have full confidence that you um, can resolve this. I might say, hey, you don't need me to solve this. Try it the way you just did. If I notice that they have trouble not checking in with me, I will say, check in with each other instead of looking at me. And then sometimes the therapist has to turn their head, look down, do something physical to signal to the family that you're not available in that moment. And now, of course, this is after uh, 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 after the therapy's really going well, and you've helped to disrupt some of the patterns, and you've built a really strong alliance with each family member, um, then you would uh, do things like that, like turn away from them. Um, and at the end of the day, like why does the therapist do this? If the family depends on the therapist, the change is not going to last. If we always need to be there or be involved, uh, then I guess we should just join the family. But that's not that's permanently, which that's not going to be helpful for anybody. Um, so yeah, our goal is to become more obsolete, uh, and help the family rely on each other. At this stage, um, I might do something that encourages the relapse of symptoms. So if a child wasn't going to school and now they are going to school, I might playfully say, like, I think it's time for you to stop going to school. Um, and I do this because it's a way to it's a paradoxical intervention. Um, a family will then tell you, well, no, I don't want to do that again. Especially if you do this once things are going well and once changes have been made. Um, and by doing that paradoxical intervention, you amplify the felt changes or difference that emerged um, over the course of treatment. So instead of trying to eliminate the symptom, I'm asking the family to do it on purpose. It makes this pattern more conscious instead of automatic. And in the humor, it kind of disrupts that emotional intensity around the symptom. It also gives the family more control or a sense of control. Um, I might say, tonight I want you to schedule a time to worry together. Well, they're probably not going to do it. Um, but um, and I might say, can you intentionally recreate that argument and notice what happens? Um, let's plan when this behavior will occur instead of it just taking over. So let's schedule, let's put on the calendar when you are going to um, be disruptive or refuse to go to school or whatever it might be. Um, One of the reasons for doing this is it often breaks this cycle because the behavior kind of loses its power when it's less spontaneous. Um, and the things that are most powerful and influential are often the unconscious, and the things that we are not as much in our awareness. But to make it more concrete and it takes away that energy. Um, so in structural family therapy, ultimately change isn't real until the family can maintain it without the therapist present. So at the beginning of therapy, I let people know that I will reach back out to them 3 to 6 months after our therapy has completed, as a way to understand what changes have maintained, and what is the family doing differently. Alrighty. I am gonna stop that share and I'm gonna load up the video and set that up for you all. Um, okay. Where? Okay, where? Here we go. Willingly or up? Okay. All right, so as I set this up, and if I could ask that we pause recording here if that's possible, or just make sure if it isn't paused that when the editing happens, um, we make sure to take out this portion that shows the video. Um, okay. So we'll see if how this works with the translation. There is um, a transcript that isn't perfect. Some of the words are a little off. I think it was done by AI. It's the transcript of the video, but most of it is pretty darn accurate. So I will start it. You'll be able to follow along, hopefully, with the translation. Um, and what I will do if there are particular moments that I think are poignant, and just to maybe clarify what he's saying, I will pause the video and share for a moment. Uh, this tape is called The Caretaker. It is a video of Dr. Mnuchin providing a consultation to a foster care agency as well as a drug abuse, substance abuse agency, working with a very complex family that has two parents, two children. Both children are in foster care, in part due to mother's substance abuse problems. And you'll see in this video the move that Mnuchin does from moving the emphasis being on the mother's individual substance use as the primary problem to be fixed before she can be a successful parent. He opens that up and actually challenges that belief and suggests that that belief is actually part of what is keeping this mother from being uh, a good parent. So the belief that she has to, quote, help herself first is uh, a belief that um, problems exist inside people that need to be fixed. So I will roll the tape and hopefully it's will make sense. Let's see. Um, Let me go back to Zoom. Okay, share.
And usually there's a lot of people involved. They got the room crowded, people sitting on the floors, people coming out from the woodworks, listening to the chair. Yeah. What right? Well, push. He said, you.
Ah, okay. Mm. But here's let's see. Here's part of the problem. When I enlarge it, it takes away the subtitle transcript. So let me go back to the video. Um, ah, so where do in. Mm-hmm. Okay. Share Zoom windows optimized for video sharing, maybe. Share sound. Yes, yes, share sound. Okay, so now let me go. Yeah, now I gotta go back to the video because this is always what happens to me. Where is the actual video now? Okay, apologize about this. I am okay. All right, let me. Okay, sync the video. Um, okay, share this. Okay.
Hi there, everybody. Ah, usually there's a lot of people involved. They got the rooms crowded, people sitting on the floors, people coming out from the woodworks, listening to the chair. Yeah. What? No, the question is that your family has about 20 people involved with you. You know, and so they are all there. I see.
So is that working better? Okay. So I think the one, yeah, so the ones that are highlighted, I will say sync to video. I see, yeah. So it's yeah, great. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
And all of them are in some way or other are being involved. True. But see, this is where the questions come. What I don't know is how many people are, as if it is good to have all these many people, or how many of them are good and how many of them are not good. It is common for poor families to be involved with a multitude of helpers. This tape will examine this phenomenon. It will highlight the kind of thinking that gives rise to the proliferation of disconnected services, and it will explore the frequently unfortunate effects this proliferation has on families. The tape is based on a consultation of Dr. Salvador Minuchin with the family of Marcy and Wilfredo. Marcy and Wilfredo have two children, both of whom are in foster care. The social worker assigned to the case by the foster care agency introduces us to the family members. Wilfredo's, I know best. He has brought himself through a lot of, his legs are very small. He has this brittle bone syndrome. And he's gone through a lot of suffering and physically. And he has developed a kind of physical willpower. He gets himself around in a wheelchair. He even does, he gets money from begging and performing a kind of rap dancing thing on subways. He's very kind of bonded very, very strongly with the older child who is the sick one, has the same disease he has. The other child went right into foster care from the hospital. So there's almost no bonding with that child. That's a real problem. Mother has been into 3 drug programs, and she has not stayed with any of them for the length of time that she needed to. The last 2 that she was in, she went right back onto the street. Present in the consultation room with the family was one of Marcy's therapists from her most recent drug treatment program, seated here on the left. the foster mother of Abril, Marcy and Wilfredo's youngest child, the foster mother of Jasmine on the left, and the foster care social worker. Prior to the consultation, Dr. Mnuchin met with the staff of the foster care agency and with 3 members of the staff of the drug treatment program to discuss the case. Mnuchin opened the discussion with a question to the drug treatment staff. So you have this woman for 3 months, and you have Mark that is the social worker of this family, and you have these 2 children, and you have these 2 foster mothers. So we have a very complex map. How do you fit in that map?
Really on the outside.
On the outside.
In my sense of trying to coordinate Marcy's treatment for her own individual growth and attempting to find ways of getting her back into her family life, which she chooses to do.
And then that means that you are focusing only on him. And you want her to focus only on you.
No. Marcy needs to focus really on her own individual needs. All we do is try to facilitate that process.
Key piece of it, she's no longer our client because she left the program of her own accord a week ago.
For the drug treatment staff, Marcy is an individual, and her drug addiction is an individual problem. Treatment in this perspective requires that Marcy explore her individual self and address her individual needs. This perspective placed the drug treatment staff at odds with the agenda of the foster care agency. When you say the social worker, what does it mean? What do you do?
That's a good question. I would like to be a helper in joining the family back together. Now, the situation is that this family has a wish to come back together, and lots of things pulling them apart.
You want to say something?
Yes. I would think that it seems that the main issue, which I would think it seems that one of the main issues, which would be a difference perhaps between the way we saw the family at Project Church and the way perhaps you're seeing her and hearing you describe her, is whether the family should actually stay together or not stay together. And so through our assessment in terms of Marcy's drug history and so on, it seems that Wilfredo and Marcy have a very difficult relationship and it's at times abusive. He does.
It's a very difficult relationship that
he is abusive to her, physically abusive.
He's physically abusive.
And I think Marcy is very ambivalent as to whether she wants to go back, whether she wants even to have her children back, whether she feels capable as a mother for these children. Well, I think is a big issue for her. And I think in a lot of ways she's working from a fear base. Prior to Marcy's leaving our program, I know that she was being confronted by other members of the program on her attitude about her family and her place in her family and how sort of responsible she felt for the family and that she needed to protect them. But then again, she didn't want to protect them. She wanted her own life. But then again, and they were saying, hey, wait a minute. And a lot of the residents in the program were really pushing her to be honest about how she was feeling and to try and come to less of a juggling act of all of these things. And my impression is perhaps that conflict in her of whether to go back to the family and be a mother and a wife in that family, or to be an independent person, which would mean that she would put that family aside. You see, that conflict was coming up.
The way in which you present these things, and I see them with a different perspective. Okay. See, you see the struggle inside of her, and I see the struggle between these 2 agents.
That's what I was going to point out is that
maybe what I'm asking is What I'm asking is, wittingly or unwittingly, are you working in opposition?
I believe that we were.
Huh?
I believe that ultimately we were, and that that's where the conflict arose, although we didn't realize that it was happening.
So he's saying, and the part I'm highlighting here, he's saying, what I am going to point out that maybe what I'm asking is wittingly or unwittingly, are you working in opposition? The two agencies is the drug agency, who thinks that she needs to fix herself before she can be a parent, versus the foster care agency, which is trying to respond to the family's desires to reunite and stay together.
I think at the level that Marcy was feeling it, that Variety House is saying, you know, let's get these roots together, meet you with your family, and ultimately have you return to your home and be a mother to your children. And on the Project Return end, Marcy's really grappling with that as something that she possibly really doesn't want to do.
So,
From the perspective of the drug treatment staff, individual integrity has precedence over and is frequently in conflict with being in relationship. This outlook placed the drug treatment program at odds with the foster care agency, which assigns priority to being in relationship. The need to accommodate to these different perspectives stressed Marcy.
She initially was to go to Variety House to have her visits with her children. However, when she went to Variety House for the first time,
Right.
she had this very emotional reaction whereby she was just in a terrible panic and hysterically crying. And I spoke to her on the phone and tried to get her to come back. And ultimately, she said she would only come back if Wilfredo told her she should go back, which he did. And she decided to come back.
First, we had a meeting at our place, and Marcy got very emotional, started crying, didn't want to go back to the program. It was quite a strong emotional reaction. She did not want to go back. She couldn't see her kids again. She didn't care about anything. But she did go back. She claimed she went back for Wilfredo, the man, the father.
you would say that as she left your place, is it because she is pulled by things outside of your place, or is that she was rejecting your place?
I think she was really rejecting me.
Huh?
What I see is that whole battle, I think she was doing a lot better than she gave herself credit for. And I think that's scary.
Within the drug program's individual perspective, Marcy's eventual dropping out from the program is to be attributed to her individual pathology, her internal ambivalence and conflict. Dr. Mnuchin's systemic perspective provides an alternative explanation.
You see, I think that I am exploring the collaboration of the two places and the synergy or opposition of the forces. Because you are working in terms of increasing her competence as an participant in this world, that is the world that the foster parent, the two children, and his boyfriend, and you're working in terms of increasing her sense of competence and her ability to survive.
The individual perspective shared by the drug treatment staff is the prevailing perspective among the institutions and agencies that deliver services to poor families. It is this perspective that leads these agencies to refer individual family members to a new helper every time a new problem is defined. And it is this perspective that frequently leads the multiple helpers to make a multitude of competing demands on poor families.
I was just thinking when you're talking about this, that the conflict in that sense goes even further than between us and variety house. It goes between the couple themselves and also between the foster family and the physical family, because it seems like if you're saying the foster families are so well for children, then they have a vested interest in wanting to keep the children. Marcy's.
You are saying it is a serious, it is like a geodesic dawn.
Yes.
And everybody is pulling from Marshall, and she cries.
Yeah. And she.
So are we
returning.
doing this family some good? You have here a family that is quite fragmented. You have, her name is Abril. Abril and Jasmine. And she lives with you. And Jasmine lives with you. And you were living, well, you were, I was living in my own risk. In your own nest. On my own behalf. And that shifts sometimes. What do you mean shifts? It means that sometimes if you don't have a permanent. Well, see, I had a permanent, but because things went the way it went, I wound up losing it. Now, according to the way things flow for me, I am looking forward to have my own place again and be with the family in the Lord's name, you know what I'm saying? Confusion is that she was in a state of drugs and it put us apart. Other than not being with the girls, we do not want that. We want them to be with us. I want the family to be once again a family. You know, like her, which is the mother of our daughter. Other than seeing them as it is, that she's with her and she's with her. Tell you the truth, they're both supposed to be together, not apart. As bad as it is, not be apart. I agree with you. See, I agree with you. I think that it's incorrect. See, with that, it's just like this. Because of what Jasmine has, and for the facilities that Variety Homes has, that's why she's there. And the way I feel like this, okay, they're not together. Granted, but she's with Chris. I trust Chris. Out of the things that I've been through with foster mothers, with me being an adopted child. You had been an adopted child? Yes. And with that situation, there is a part of me that's very skeptical about them being there. But as of them agreeing with her, she has my trust, and Jasmine's happy with Mary. And that means you know very well. It's not, excuse me, it's not saying that we would actually say, okay, they can live with them for good because we didn't create them for nothing. See, I just want to say something so that you will know from where I come, okay? That's so good knowledge, because I like that. I want you to know from where I come. You know, I come from a position in which I am trying to understand. And I'm trying to see if we can make some sense that is helpful. And I am not an authority, I'm not judicial, you know, I'm not with the Department of Welfare, I'm with nobody. I'm really in some way with the people behind the one we mirror, trying to see, can we think clearer? And then that's all. So my question, no, I am addressing myself to was because maybe my question sounded like aggressive or confrontative. If it was, I apologize. See, to me, it's I'm gonna say because it could have been already addressed to me. When it comes to my family, I get back the first. Yeah, I get back the first. That's why I'm explaining myself because I realized that I challenge you without wanting to. You know, I didn't want to. It was a question. It was a question because your family is so fragmented. And so to reunify a family that has been now what, 3, 4 months separate.
Yeah, we put separate. My children, then because she, when she was born, when I was pregnant, when I was getting high.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so when she was born, I went into the hospital when it was time for me to give birth, and I told them, I said, I would like for her to be in foster care because I knew what I was doing.
Uh-huh.
And for it not to affect her or for her to be dragged down with me, I made that decision. That decision is eating me up. I feel terrible because of that. Because as a relationship and a bond between a mother and a daughter, me and her do not have. Now me and Jasmine have a bond.
No.
But see, I want to have a bond with her too.
Marcia, you just left a week ago. You left
Wednesday will be a week.
Yeah.
Wednesday will be a week.
Wednesday will be. And when you left, did you know that she was married? Until I called, because Mansville, where I was staying at, that's supposed to be April's godmother. And everything. Give me that face. I was staying there, I found out from them. I was like, wait a minute, let me see if it's true. You know, cause I even told her I want her to continue to do what you gotta do to be with us again. Can I ask you, Marshall, if I am intrusive or if I am provocative, you just tell me and I change, okay? So I want to ask you straight questions and you tell me, but out, I but out, okay? So,
Well, certain things. This right now I'm open to suggestions.
just point was always, you know, when you left, you took that decision on your own. It was a decision that probably you would have disagreed.
I would have probably encouraged her to stay, yeah.
Yeah, that means that
Would have just,
you don't think that is the right move. That was the right move. But you thought that was the right move. Is that correct?
Yes, and your next question is why?
You took that decision and you took that decision on your own. You didn't ask him, the children, daughter. Did you talk to Martin about
I seen Martin the day after I came home.
that?
The day after I left.
You went and told him that you did it. And you, can you share with us your reasons?
My reasons for leaving.
Yeah, and maybe you are the wiser.
Have the cover, right?
You know, maybe you are the wiser in this, that you know about yourself more than anybody else. So
Right? No, wait a minute.
See,
Up there they said keep it simple, so I keep my answer simple. I left
no,
because
you can make it complicated.
no complications. I have a habit of taking people along for a very confusing ride.
I love that. So it's just, don't you just.
Can't experience one of my rides. So
I don't mind.
I'm gonna keep it simple. I left because of everything that would happen up there. You know, I feel, a part of me feels that because if I had stayed in there, I learned that I could have lived without him, that I could learn to just be my own person and to take care of me. But I'm not one of my concerns. My concerns are towards him, towards my children. And being there, it was head on dealing with me.
Beautiful.
And you told me to finish. Let me finish.
But I can say it's beautiful. You know,
You know, it's hard. It's hard. Thank you. Let's see. Another thing for leaving is because a lot of things issues in my life
I dealt with them that it happened. And I was kind of not so much dealing with it, but accepting. And up there, it was opening up a lot of things and a lot of pain and a lot of anger. And it came to the point that up there, I couldn't see my father because of the things that happened between me and him and of the conversations we had. So they said that I couldn't see him. And through the things that have happened between me and him, sooner or later that would have popped up too. So I felt not fully out of balance without my father, because I'm used to my old man, him, and my father in my life. And I lost one of my legs there, and I'm not used to that.
Marcy finds herself in her connections with others, as difficult as those connections might be. As a result, she experienced the drug treatment program's individual focus as foreign and toxic. Her departure from the program was an act of self-affirmation.
In my way of thinking, by the way, thank you. We felt, I just am talking with myself, but I really want to include you into that. In my way of thinking, to be part of a family is a very important feeling, to feel competent and not to feel depressed and not to need drugs. I think that, you see, I feel very strongly that programs that take you away from your family may not be as helpful as other people think. That's my opinion. It's a private opinion. Well, I mean, I know how to feel good. He thinks how she feels because I'm taking care of him. And partly, I put it because it's like taking care of him. I have to deal with the moodiness. You're a caretaker. You're a caretaker. They're my responsibility. Yes. Yes. All three of them. Yeah. You're a strong woman. I say strong. I just say dealing with New York. You're a strong woman. I just think dealing because until he comes, it's him and his relationship is not something that we sat fully and talked about. It was a relationship we jumped into, and throughout this relationship of 4 years, we have 2 children. So it's not only me and him anymore. So I have to take care and protect them. Is it sometimes heavy? Is it sometimes very heavy? Very hairy? Heavy. Yeah. Heavy. Deep? Yeah, to take. What do you mean by deep? Right? Put a load on you to take care. This feeling that you need to take care of all these people. No, because I've taken care of my 4 brothers, my father. I've taken care of them. Yeah. And just with them, this is just my family I have to take care of now. You know what I'm saying? You sure something like as I hear myself, I hear a caretaker. She's a caretaker. She has been a caretaker all her life. You want some? No candies and Johnson. Oh, why? No. Say hello, candy. You cannot unemploy a caretaker. Oh, you cannot unemploy. You cannot have a caretaker that doesn't have a job. There's always somebody there for them to take care of. And Marshall is an unemployed caretaker. How am I unemployed caretaker? Oh, because I don't have my kids with me right now. When a caretaker is unemployed, it gets very concerned. It gives a sense of worthlessness. And she has decided that she cannot be in your place and not do her job. Her job is to take care. in your place, you said to her, "Well, take care of yourself first. And, and it came a point in which she disagreed with you.
Came a point, it was something that I fully agree with. It's okay for a person to feel that they work to take care of, that it's okay for them to take care of themselves, that they got that selfishness about them, then that program is for them. But it's not for me because I cannot. Right.
So he's eliciting from her the aspect of her which is kind of the most important part of her, which is this identity as somebody who takes care of other people. Whereas the substance abuse place had a totally different framework of saying you need to take care of yourself first. And that did not fit with her. And her absconding from leaving the substance use place was seen as, an expression of her not doing the important work that she needs to do, but he is reframing it as it is her uh, affirming what was important to her.
I think I do. Yeah, I think also. I agree.
Yeah, because it was to the point, it's something that was drilling into my head for me to put it to me. I don't feel that it's for me like that.
The question is, now, how can,
Where you going?
gotcha?
Mama,
Excuse me, I didn't check out time yet. Yep. The question is, how can you make these things that you want happen? Really happen? How can you have a life in which you can have yourself also? Because when she's a caretaker, she's also taking care of herself. There is something about the job of caretaking that is very satisfying.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this is important, and one should help her. But sometimes that becomes too heavy, and then she goes wrong. She wants to avoid that.
So when he says here, sometimes that becomes too heavy, the role of caretaking. And then she goes to drugs. So he's not denying that there's a problem. But instead of the problem being the sort of black and white, she goes over there and is separated from her families to heal. Um, how can we incorporate this identity of hers and help her in the given system that we have? Help her also take care of herself.
She wants to really know. How can you use the helpers now? And that becomes an issue for you, Martin. It's also for you, Mary, and it's also for you. How can these people really Marsha outside of an institution and drug free?
So the goal is, how can you keep his challenge to the providers? How can you keep Marcia outside of the institution and drug free?
It starts with her wish, but she needs help. And that is not what you want to work with them. You want to work because she needs connection. If she doesn't have the connections with her children, if she doesn't have the connection with her fellow, then she is taken care of, then she will be depressed and she will go to drugs. So you need to use the foster parents to help her to have the sense that she's having now. The Jasmine and Ed are connected.
So he's noticing a moment of of goodness in this session where this child Jasmine is who formerly was less connected and bonded to mom, that she's sitting in mom's lap. So he's saying, how can we, the providers, help that to happen more?
And April and Aaron begin to be connected. They are not connected yet. They are not connected yet. You need to have that connection. And, and maybe it will be difficult for you, I don't know. Because you are very connected with her. I know that. So how would it be very difficult for you to have Marcia to connect with her daughter? Yes, yes. Because you love her.
Yeah, but I understand that being a foster mother, I love her just like I do. It is one man, but still, I'm not a real mother.
But it's very difficult.
Yes, it is. So I had a child leave me
Yeah,
very hard.
very, very hard. I think I will stop because I don't have anything more to say except that I agree with you. Oh, I agree with you. Baba, I agree with you about you need to be connected. And that this is essential in your life. It is. In your life. It is. Because being, it's just, certain times that I have to talk to him, or I even have time to talk with him. It was a toll I felt. Like something was missing. Being there and them outside, there was no balance for me there. Tell me something. Where are you staying now? Me? I'm gonna go stay in the man's house. In the man's house. What's that?
That's the outpatient program we've talked about. It's like a program.
I'm gonna go stay right there. And you have, they give you shelter? They give me shelter, but I have time let's see, from a certain amount of time in the morning to a certain amount of time in the night, I have that time up to take care of my outside business, which is my outside businesses. Maybe maybe you are much smarter than the rest of us. No, if that's the case, this would be my office. maybe you, maybe you're finding a place in the future. Maybe she's finding a place that is more appropriate for her than your place.
But an individual perspective on how to help poor families leads to the proliferation of helpers and with alarming frequency to the fragmentation of families. A systemic perspective, which recognizes and values the connection between people as a healing resource, provides an alternative that unfortunately remains largely unexplored.
Okay. Alrighty. Wanted to open it up. Sorry about the apologies for some of the audio difficulties. Hopefully, we managed to correct that just enough so that you could get the translation. Any questions or thoughts about that? And if nothing is coming to mind right now, feel free to add those to the questions that will then be sent to me before next week so we can go over some of the video stuff if we don't have time today. What I liked about Mnuchin's work here is that he went in with a basic assumption of competence and also that this parent or parents, despite their challenges, want to be parents. And it's not that they don't need help, they do need help. Um, but what he is showing is that the help that was provided was inadvertently leading to more disconnection because it was making Marcy, the mom, feel more disconnected from her family, which led to feelings of isolation and depression, which amplified her drug use. And so we need to be very careful and mindful when we are working with families that are involved in multiple systems to try to help the systems and providers work in a way that is um, promoting connection and promoting relationship. And if the ideologies of the providers is very different, the foster care provider ideology was connection's the most important thing, whereas the substance abuse providers felt that the individual focus was kind of their ideology, and that was in direct opposition. Um, and so Mnuchin, in a sense, wasn't intervening with the family per se. He was intervening with the providers. And that's an aspect of structural family therapy that I find very exciting and appealing, is the larger, uh, how our systems of care unwittingly make things not better. Not because we don't want to make, I mean, we care, but there's ways that we organize our interventions and the way we think about where problems are located that inadvertently get in the way of this natural human healing instinct of being connected and being belonging and having uh, a purpose. So this Marcy, her purpose in life was to take care of others. Now, there were ways in which that wasn't working out perfectly. Um, so the question is how can we help her um, be a caretaker, but do it in such a way where she doesn't become so exhausted and overwhelmed that and depressed that she then goes to drugs. Um, I will be curious to know questions that anybody has either around this video and then also the first part of the lecture. Um, and happy to go into those next week. Um, I will also come up with a list. Oh, wait, before I say that, I think it's tricky with the translation and the video, so I'd be curious to hear feedback on that. I think this is the first time that I'm actually um doing it across a different language. Um, and it's sometimes, frankly, even when I share this video to a native English speaking group, it's still sometimes hard to hear and fully understand because it's an old video. Um, yeah, so I'll be curious to know how that went technically for you all and if it was useful. Um, yeah, and unless anybody has a burning question, uh, we will break. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you all next week for our final meeting. I'll also come up with a list of materials, some readings um, to share for you guys to, if you're not going to do the second part of this training, which is focused on case consultation. And that's happening, I think, in May and June, uh, 2 or 3 sessions. Um, we can talk more about that next week. Okay, excellent. Thank you all, and have a good evening and rest of your week.